I'm the global channel chief for CloudCapsule. And I'm joined here with Nick Ross, our CEO.
Hey, guys.
And we're really pleased to have Shane and AJ from GCS Technologies out of Austin, Texas with us. Shane, why don't you give us a little intro?
Hey, yay. Thanks for having us on today. I'm Shane Gronniger. I'm the CEO of GCS Technologies. We're an MSP out of Austin, Texas, with a heavy specialization in the Microsoft stack. And here today to talk a little bit about how we're using it.
Wonderful. And AJ, you're a busy guy, but you were able to peel away some time to join us. Tell us a little bit about your role there at GCS.
Yeah, I'm AJ, and I am the Director of Security Operations at GCS, and my primary role is the building and management and daily operations of our cloud security team, which focuses on Microsoft 365 security stack.
That's wonderful. Shane, tell us a little bit more about the practice. So, I know you guys are based in Austin, but tell us a little bit about, some of the markets you focus on, kind of your journey up till now, and just tell us a little bit more about the team.
Sure. Well, we're celebrating 25 years in business this year, which we're pretty proud of. So been around a long time. I guess we'll kind of start from the beginning quickly. Like a lot of others in our industry, we started off by offering help desk services and essentially being the IT department, right, for small or medium-sized businesses in Central Texas, or an extension of the IT department for those bigger companies that had some kind of internal IT footprint. And then over the years, we brought things like virtualization, cloud, and now cybersecurity to our clients. And our focus really in the last 5 to 10 years has shifted more from not just keeping our customers up and running, but keeping them secure and compliant. And so we are really evolving more into an MSSP, a managed security service provider. But we have 25 years of MSP experience and a big team that can do all the infrastructure and support kind of lifts. But really we took a hard shift away from all these point solutions about 5 years ago and fully adopted the Microsoft 365 security stack. And so we built a managed security practice around that and brought it to our customers, kind of met them where they were, because most of them were already in Microsoft 365. And we've never really looked back, and we've definitely been unique amongst some of our peers that we meet with regularly in the MSP space, because we don't use traditional RMM tools. We don't use a lot of the traditional, point solutions that many of our peers are using. So we, have turned the Microsoft corner and really haven't looked back. We often say we're unapologetically Microsoft. We really have had great success with a lot of their tools, and so and AJ and his team have really helped us deliver this to our clients in a meaningful way. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's hard to do, but I also think a lot of great models from that as well, just in the sense of reducing your operational overhead in a lot of ways, getting people streamlined. And, there's a lot of great security considerations, obviously, with the Microsoft stack that you can get into there that requires a lot of investment initially to learn it, to keep up with it, and so forth. But certainly something that plays into where I saw success also, at the MSP that I worked at called Summit Technology, where we were just focused on Microsoft stack as well, too. But one thing, we've been working together now for a little bit since you joined CloudCapsule and have started using that product. But outside of that, one of the things that I've recognized that you guys do very uniquely is just how you talk to your customers and the way that you approach security and compliance conversations with them to get them invested, to get them interested. Up to the point where, when AJ brought to me that he was screen sharing, security topics, data within their tenant, and kind of walking them through that and walking them through a continuous improvement plan. I said, hey, that's really unique. Like, I don't see that too often where customers are really bought into that layer or interested. And I think AJ has some unique qualities that, garners those customers onto the tenants or onto those calls, I should say. But would love to hear from you and you guys both just on, how does that look for you today? Like all the way from trying to get new customers through the door into, the weekly, the quarterly talk tracks that you have with them about security and compliance.
sure. AJ, let me kick this one off, and then I'll let you kind of walk through, some of the things, the magic that you do, and some of these meetings. But yeah, the client engagement model is like super important because we're not just buying tools here; we're buying process and frameworks and uh, services around it. And so we tell clients often, yeah, you can buy the stuff, but you need somebody to help you tune it and tweak it and monitor it and manage it. And yeah, things deteriorate over time, right? We know the threat landscape's moving a mile a minute. And so we have to also keep up with that. Microsoft is making constant changes, right? And so we're also having to keep up with that. And so we really almost demand that our customers engage with us all the way up to the board level if they can, but up to the executive level, and that they take these meetings with us. And that's a really important component. And I think, having the right people in front of our customers, like AJ and the team as well, to help them understand what they're paying for, but really showing them the results. And I think we're outcome driven, right? We don't want to be transactional with our customers, and we want to understand what outcomes and what risks exist in the, we want to kind of line up the outcome to match the risk of the business. The law firm down the street has a much different risk profile and appetite for security than the plumbing shop next to them, right? So, but many of them have overlapping needs, in the fact that they need to be secure, they need MFA, they need a lot of these basics. And so anyway, that client engagement model has been really important. And for those clients that do engage, they really we're able to get a lot further and a lot like deeper and wider with them. So AJ, yeah, do you want to talk through a little bit about what you cover in those meetings and how you talk to customers?
So, well, the meetings have evolved, of course, as our product has evolved. When this first started, I was just sending emails to people and filling them full of all kinds of information I wanted to explain. But we evolved it into a security call. They're usually monthly or quarterly, and we go through a lot of things. I can remember the days of having 30 tabs open ready for a call, just so I could talk the client from start to finish. And I would go through access management and PIM, get into risk detections, identity secure score, go through their licensing and do a licensing review to see, are we overspending on licensing, or are there people that don't have the right licenses? Migrate into the endpoint management, go through their antivirus and malware detection screens, look at device compliance, look at device onboarding, device cleanup, move into Defender, and start looking at the Explorer screens for, phishing detection and ZAP results, because those are things that clients need to know about. They need to know that Defender has tools for pre and post mail delivery and what those things look like. I'd go through their protection policies, their threat policies. In the days of the old CloudCapsule, sorry, not CloudCapsule, but Defender for Cloud Apps portal, we'd migrate into there. Now that's all in Defender, but just give them a soup to nuts review of everything that's going on. And what I found doing that is most people had no idea how much Microsoft actually had in the way of security tools, and how much we were utilizing what was there to protect them. And it created a lot of value, even when they didn't understand everything I was saying. They realized that there's a lot going on and that we're doing a lot to keep them up with their secure scores and all of the various protections.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think there is a lot to consume there, obviously, and people have obviously a knowledge gap on the technical side of what they're reading, and I think obviously sounds like a lot of education went into that too, of educating on why this matters and things like that as you're walking them through. Are you finding that there's consistent questions they're trying to ask you across clients, or does it vary just depending on the data that they're seeing? Have you found any consistencies there?
There's always consistency with the questions around MFA and access, because the evolution is never ending with how do we get into the data and how do we do it safely. So conversations tend to progress through different levels of MFA, trying to get people moved over to passwordless now, or at the very least the strong MFA methods, and explaining to people that, well, that MFA was good 2 years ago, but a voice call, an email, a text message, that's not the thing today. We gotta get past that and change again. So those kinds of things are pretty consistent. After that, it goes just a lot of industry specific. my medical hospital clients have different questions than the law offices or the critical manufacturing entities or my water and wastewater clients. Like it all just, boils down to what is important to them.
Well, I'd say the other current we see a lot is or feedback is around AI, right? AI readiness, either wanting to adopt things like Copilot or being very, very afraid of things like Copilot, right? We have two different kind of sides of the fence. People that are trying to block all generative AI apps from their environment, and then those that are really actually trying to leverage it. And so, we try to take a very cautious approach on that too. But I'd say that's been obviously a hot topic. And then that leads into, well, how are you governing your data, and a lot of other data classification and just data governance things that we're getting more into, right? That also kind of segue into best practices frameworks like CIS controls. And so a lot of those types of conversations happening across a lot of our clients over the last couple of years.
And what are you guys finding as far as like the outcomes of those meetings? Is that, you're showcasing what's going on in their tenant, what are we doing to improve it? And, we'll just hop on the next one when the next, meeting occurrence is there, or is there other outcomes that come from those calls?
So there's various types of outcomes. Some of the clients have adopted pretty much everything I can think of to recommend, and I don't take all the credit for that. I use tools like your channel to keep up on a lot of things and make sure that I'm staying current as well. But for the people who have already adopted mobile device management, mobile application management, the latest security tools, a lot of the time it's just an update. Hey, this is the way things look. Saw we had, somebody clicked on a malicious URL last month. Let's look at what happened there. But for a lot of clients, when they're first getting on our program, we have staged processes where, okay, step one is we got to get you out of the 50s, 40s, and 30% secure scores and into the 80s and 90s with the rest of our clients. Like that's first and foremost. We got to get you up there and get those basics like ASR and everything else that goes into that rolling. After that, now we need to branch out. We need to look at device trust to make sure that if someone is hacked, they can't get in off of an unknown device. Securing their corporate mail on everybody's BYOD phone. And there's just a kind of a stepped process through the things that we need to talk to them. And quite frankly, CloudCapsule helps us do that quite a bit because you guys have those playbooks and it kind of keeps things in the front. And so we use that a lot to structure our calls.
I want to kind of double click into that just a little bit too, because a lot of what you just covered is, it's kind of the next level of conversations with clients, but it's also the next level of a technical engagement with clients. And I think a lot of partners struggle with this initial step of they might be, performing really well in the MSP space, providing really good technical support and projects. But when they start to talk about pulling in more of an advanced security practice, there is kind of a discussion like, well, are we going to include this in our package? Is this going to be an additional fee? Are we going to do a couple of these things as projects, or are we going to do this as continuous improvement for a fee? There's a couple of different ways to kind of approach that. And I think some folks get a little hung up sometimes trying to navigate that. But what have you guys found is the best process for your team as you kind of have those more in-depth discussions and you start to uncover more and more work that needs to be done? How do you guys approach that?
Well, typically, I put them into two different camps. The items that the security analysts on my team are going to handle and the stuff I'm going to send to my project team. So if it's something that I can configure and roll out, user impact is minimal to mediocre, and there's some collaboration that needs to happen, but I've got a few hours worth of work, this is going to stay on my team with my analysts. Something like a full deployment of, mobile devices for device MDM that's going to include iOS and Android devices and have managed apps and, restrictions and that kind of thing is definitely something I'm going to send to my project team and my solutions architects and have them go through the client and set up, the timetable and the scale of the scope of the project and all that. So, MAM probably stays on my team, quite frankly, and we just collaborate and work through that because it's not overly complicated to set up and get implemented, whereas MDM, definitely a project because they need to have a lot of involvement and they need to have a consistent, sustained effort to get that done.
I was going to add to that. We have a dedicated team here outside of our support and security desks that handle deployments, right? And so they can iterate, and get really good and have good SOPs for a lot of these common projects we do, whether it be MAM related. Sometimes it's just mass deployments of Defender and Intune that are pretty heavy lifts for a typical MSP help desk to do. So that we work in conjunction with them quite a bit.
And when you guys are talking with that, obviously there's the education piece that factors in, I feel like, a lot of into the value of why you should go do this project. But are you guys factoring that in, like the projects that need to get done into QBRs or part of that security call? Is that when those projects come up?
Yeah, a lot of it is after we've already onboarded a client onto our managed security platform. And as I get to know the client and their environment and start talking through their needs and start seeing some of the alerts that they get, that information all feeds into how we prioritize the projects that we want to talk to them about. Obviously, if they're having a lot of problems that stem from their mobile devices and those are all personal devices, then, MAM's going to come up pretty quick, or an MDM conversation. So it really just kind of depends on what the feel is after we start reviewing and talking to them about the client and going through their particular challenges.
And for a lot of our key accounts, we have, a VCIO type of role assigned to those accounts to conduct quarterly, meetings. And so a lot of those do get dominated with security projects these days. As we've seen a lot of people move to cloud and adopt things like 365 or public cloud services, like they don't have this need anymore for the on-premises piece. And so the roadmap isn't the, traditional infrastructure refreshes that we did for a long time. It's now security improvements and even getting into things like managed compliance. So
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I suspect you're probably seeing some of your reactive tech support time go down on those accounts too, because they are, embracing more of the modern cloud model, right?
That's right. Yeah.
There's a balance point there. There's a little more sophisticated security sometimes has a little bit of a lift, but overall, some of the reactive tech support seems to kind of be lessened a bit,
or replaced sometimes with the the alerting, because now we've got a lot more visibility into what is happening in the environment, and so we're responding to things that before they may not have ever been able to see because they didn't have the licensing or the security tools in place.
Well, and that brings up a great question I was going to ask too. As you're having those VCIO calls, and as you're walking folks through some of that security engagement, what types of information are they interested in seeing? Are they looking for reports? Are they looking just for assurances and roll-up data? Or give us a feel for what your clients are asking.
So they're always interested in visuals. A picture's worth 1,000 words. And when those of us familiar with Microsoft will know that if you walk someone through 25 different tabs that have different portals from Microsoft 365, you're going to lose the audience. It's a challenge. They don't know what they're looking at. There's a lot of white space on the screen. There's a lot of little bitty writing. There's a lot of graphics in there to show them, but that's what the majority of the clients that I interact with want to see is a picture that shows how well they are secure. And again, we use your tools for a lot of that, being able to show them their secure score in a better or more understandable way than what the Microsoft portal shows. But being able to give them a readout or an indication, green, red, and yellow of how am I doing on my device security? How am I doing on my users? How am I doing on my MFA? These are the things that they really want to see, that they have a firm grasp on and an understanding of.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we've heard, I think that's why it's unique of what you guys do. Of there's some clients obviously they say, hey, go take care of it. I don't want to hear about it. And there's that whole situation where it's harder to provide value, where you're just seen as like, hey, I'm paying you to go do this and things like that. I think there's ways to position that, but we hear that, a decent amount of, the value translation of, all the things that aren't a support ticket that's reactive, and how do you kind of express that? And I think you guys have done that uniquely here one of the other things I think, that you guys have somewhat, turned into a monetization, but also accounting for labor is like blocks of hours, to go do continuous improvement and be able to fix things, but be able to factor that in where, you're still handling your cogs of your team, AJ, obviously, and the rest of the team being able to go in there and make these updates that naturally are going to occur day to day, or Microsoft's going to change something that they always do that, causes a ripple into our organization. So I don't know if you could speak to that too, just like how you guys thought about that and how you communicated that more so to your clients as well, of the value add in that work stream, if you will.
Sure. So we tell our clients, and obviously we do this, that we're going to perform a monthly audit on a monthly cycle rotation for them. And from that initial audit where we go in and look at the tenant and compare to last month and look at like current results, we have very, very specific things we're looking for. We then generate a prioritized work ticket for that month. Now that ticket is going to have things that we saw during the audit, but it's flexible because using tools to be able to look at the day-to-day changes in the tenant have become critical, and being able to go in and say, hey, 3 days ago, that didn't look like that. We need to reprioritize our efforts for this month and then flex our ticket a little bit has really been kind of our bread and butter process. And we communicate that process to the clients that we're going to be doing that, but we also show them a lot of the times during the calls, initially we prioritize this because we're looking right here and I'm showing it to you. This is what we saw, but you had an alert come up, you had a risk of an AITM attack, and so we reprioritized some things and flexed to cover that situation.
Yeah, and the continuous improvement is such an important part of this, which is why we include, a bucket of time. We include time into this service, right? And it's not just time to monitor alerts and just wait for something to come in. When we're not playing defense, right, we're playing offense. And so we're going in and patching, and we're doing vulnerability management, right? We're doing proactive phish testing and pushing out security awareness training, and AJ and the team looking at all these different components. If you think about a traditional MSP, right, they go in usually and try to be the IT department, right? And so it's a big fixed fee contract that really includes everything. It should hopefully include security, but it includes all of the end user support and desktop support and all of those things. What we find, though, is that we meet a lot of customers that have some internal footprint, right? We do a lot of co-managed. And so they don't really need us to come in and do that piece, but what they all almost unanimously need is help on the security side. And so we kind of we go in on the opposite, or we go in, and our model is, yes, it's a fixed fee, and yes, there's time baked into that, much like a traditional MSP contract, but that time is exclusive for security. And we're not asking for permission to go bill hours to go do these important things. We know the important things that have to get done, regardless of what industry you're in or what size your tenant is. And so we just go and do those things, and we make sure that those things are baked into the service we offer, right? And a big part of demonstrating that value is, of course, getting the work done. But AJ's job is to show, the work was done, and to translate it too in a way that these businesses can understand. Because as you guys know, there's a lot of alphabet soup in our industry, a lot of acronyms, and they're changing constantly. And so we really try to avoid using product names sometimes as much, and just helping them understand, like, hey, this is the thing that's doing the really important thing, and here's the outcome that we want, and it's good. So
yeah, and I think it's a smart move too to decouple some of that from technical support, because as you grow as an MSP, you start to productize your individual product offerings or your service offerings in such a way that they can be somewhat modular. We've seen some great success, especially as you go up market into co-managed engagements. And so I think that's really smart, because a lot of times when you try to lump everything in, you might find yourself going in the wrong direction as far as cost of goods sold goes.
That's right.
You've priced it for a technical support relationship, but what you're doing is spending 80% of your time on security. Well, you might need to rethink that model a little bit, and having it modularized where there's some dedicated time and dedicated funding for that security improvement motion. I think that's a really smart move, and it helps that business owner also make the right choices on how they want to allocate their IT dollars. They might deprioritize some of the support work. Obviously, they want to provide their employees the right thing, but if maybe for a short period of time or for a year or something, they can really prioritize getting over the hurdles of some serious security improvements. I think that's a smart way to do it. So.
Yeah, thank you. And we do too. And I mean, we've had good success with this because, support, I don't want to say it's commoditized work, but some ways it is, right? Fixing computers, wiping machines, just troubleshooting. I mean, it's a very important skill set that we staff here, right? So I don't want to demean it in that way. It's just that when it comes to security, you need innovation and you need people that are really on their game and keeping up, right? And have a good security stack. We're not saying Microsoft's the only way to do it, but it's the way we do it, and it's a really good way to do it, is our opinion. And it's not just our opinion, obviously, but we really, I think we go in and our base requirement is, step one is that module of security. You really can't be a GCS customer unless you're on at least the managed security stack. All right, because we don't want to take on help desk and we don't want to take on other infrastructure management when we can't control the security outcome. Then you got two cooks in the kitchen typically, and that's usually not a great outcome, right? So that's where we start is to generally with security. And the other thing I think you touched on or you'd asked earlier, Nick, I don't think I got an answer to you, but like what industries we support or verticals we focus on. One thing that we've also really enjoyed with this Microsoft stack and being able to build a service around it is that we're meeting our customers where they already are, which is generally Microsoft, but this is relevant to the 5-person startup down the street that's creating the next big thing, all the way up to the Fortune 100s out there. And so we have currently, we support and manage commercial airlines, major league sports teams, down to big law firm, to multi-location healthcare, in all shapes and sizes. And these Microsoft tools are just so easy to consume, or at least from a licensing perspective, right? And a lot of customers we meet already are over licensed or oversubscribed in certain ways where they have access to these tools, but yet they're also paying for other third-party solutions. And so a lot of times we'll come in and help them understand that and subsidize much of what we're proposing that's on the table for us, right? In terms of us managing their environment, we're also able to get rid of some overlap.
Yeah, and I think that's super important about the TCO conversation, especially as Microsoft's baked obviously a lot into Business Premium over the years. That's made that a really powerful offering for SMB, and starting to provide some flexibility even to things like the E5 add-on, right, for security now that we see, which has a tremendous amount of value for really cost effective. It's still going to be a barrier to entry for some companies, obviously, just given, you're trying to add $12 a user to somebody's, account, but the amount of security benefit within there is quite significant as well, too. And I think that brings up a thought that you mentioned earlier around, you guys are, not traditional RMM, deployments, things like that. So are you guys using, primarily Intune, solely for everything and patching and all of that?
We are. Intune is pretty much considered the MM part of RMM, the monitoring management piece. So yeah, when we onboard a customer, step number one is all devices enrolled to Intune, Entra ID joined or hybrid joined. We have a lot of customers that still are hybrid and have on-premises AD. And so there's some nuance, right? There in like how we manage the endpoints, but
usually the gates, and I'll hear your thoughts, and maybe it's still like something that's a breakdown, but that's not too much of a pain point. But with Intune, we hear, I think the 3 biggest things is around, feedback loop for errors, troubleshooting, things like that. It's not necessarily the best that you get within there. Second would be remote connection. So you kind of maybe still have to use a third party for that if you're doing that, or you could still be using first party if you're using an add-on. And then third-party patching. So just curious, we don't have to go into the weeds on all those, but just how you guys see, potentially like obviously you're getting a big security benefit by not having the supply chain risk of the third party RMM tools, but just curious on those other pieces.
No, those are great questions, and we have these discussions a lot with some of our peers and even some of our customers and just vendors and stuff. Yeah, so Intune's great, right? But it's not the end all be all. I mean, there are definitely some things it can't do or doesn't do as well. There are part of RMM, the remote piece, where we need to be able to connect into our customers, and so we do absolutely use a secure third party platform for that. Um, on the patching side, yeah, when it comes to native Windows OS, we're able to handle that through update rings, and that's pretty easy and much better than the old WSUS days, that I'm sure some of us are remember, but don't fondly remember. But yeah, when it comes to third-party application patching, right, like Firefox, Chrome, and Adobe, it's really hard to keep up with that in Intune, and so we do use a third-party component that, again, the agent for that is deployed via Intune. And so Intune's been fantastic in the terms of being able to manage agents, the deployment of agents, the life cycle of those agents on devices. You're right, though, the feedback loop, the reporting has always been kind of a shortcoming in the Microsoft stack. And so, we have some scripts, we have some other kind of reports that we can pull the raw data out of Intune with. And then we have some other like multi-tenant management platforms we use as an MSP to help us manage tenants at scale that have some reporting capabilities baked in that go above and beyond what Microsoft offers. So, I think, yeah, Microsoft has a great security stack, no doubt. But there's also a need, if you're going to monetize, right, and build an effective service around this. As mentioned here, there's a few bolt-on things that are still needed, and those need to be managed by the MSP and secured very well, and there needs to be tight process built around it. And so that's a big value that I think we bring to our customers when we do this. Is it's not just the license, right? It's all of the intellectual property, if you will, right? All of the blood, sweat, and tears that we've put into it as a team, to learn it and to build it. So, and we're constantly evaluating, right, those tools, not just Microsoft's tools, but any other third-party tools we have. We're heavily scrutinizing not only the security, the efficacy of those, but yeah, what's happening in that space, right? Because there's a lot of innovation going on, and any MSPs out there that are listening to this right now are going to know that every 3 to 5 years we have to reinvent ourselves. If you get complacent in this business, you die pretty quickly.
Well, and adding on to that too, that's one of the primary reasons why we built in a budget and a communication chain with the clients, is because we aren't going to get like a lot of innate reporting out of Intune. And so we need to be in there looking, like doing our audit and doing our work throughout the month, and then communicating with the client about problems or needs or, extra things that have happened that we need to address. So while Microsoft's Intune isn't the best at that, it does kind of push you into better communication with your client, because you need to get those answers.
Yeah, that feedback loop, it's hard enough for us to keep up with the changes, right? New Microsoft features, obviously the security landscape as a whole, new attack vectors that are coming on board that we have to respond to. But curious, do you guys have, it sounds like the touch point is those quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, where you're kind of also sharing probably security news, security trends, things like that. Are you guys also doing any type of like email campaigns, or have you found, those to be ineffective just because of traditional email open rates and things like that? Or what's that kind of been for you guys?
I actually started our cloud security team by just communicating through email, and I rapidly grew a distaste for that, because I'm sending them an email, and I've sent them an email every month. And just because I'm sending one this month that has some different information, then they may just figure, oh, that's AJ's email that he sends every month, and file it accordingly, if you know what I mean. So, sending reports has had a lot bigger impact, especially at encouraging people to reach back out and maybe set up a call to discuss the report, as opposed to just sending stats in an email or a few screen snips and stuff like that.
Yeah, and we have a client portal tool, and we have a QBR tool that does help us produce dashboards where clients can self-service some of that information. But it's interesting, we monitor usage of those things, and they don't get used very often. I think very few. I mean, the clients are waiting for us to push the information in front of them, and they're very busy. And typically, their time is valuable. And so when we're in front of them for that hour or whatnot, it's important that we're able to provide them with good visuals and good feedback, right?
Makes sense. Yeah. What kinds of attacks are you guys seeing most frequently in your client tenants? Or it might vary, obviously, based off the client, things like that. But are there recurring things you guys are seeing more frequently right now?
AITM.
Yeah.
Adversary in the middle. It kind of has exploded over the past couple of years. It's just not slowing down. When you're doing an E5 security license, you've got a lot of tools to help try to protect people from those. And so for the most part, when we have to respond to one, it's automated attack disruption, cut off a user and threw them into containment because they clicked on a known AITM link. And so we go clean it up and, do the due diligence and check all the mailbox, settings and everything else that we're supposed to do for that. But that is probably one of the biggest issues is a malicious URL click or a suspected AITM connection or a ransomware connection, because we do monitor the FBI, NSA, CISA communications for information about large scale ransomware attacks that go on across the world, and we import their indicators of compromise, their IOCs, and deploy connectors in our tenants, in our client tenants, to prevent those types of attacks. So we do see, a lot of hits on that depending on the client. But I would say the majority is all about people clicking on a link.
Business email compromise. It's almost all coming through email predominantly. I mean, we do see just on-premises systems like a firewall, right? VPN user registry on the firewall that got hacked, and so there's still various attack vectors, but yeah, a lot going on with the token theft. And so we've moved our customers almost entirely over to just authenticator, no more SMS. And then we're also moving to Windows Hello ourselves and going passwordless soon and YubiKey potentially. And so we're always trying to reduce that attack surface, right? Every step we can. But
yeah. What does the communication look like to the client? Like, as you guys are doing incident response on those, is that, something that you have formal channels with each client to communicate to a couple individuals, one individual, or, is there awareness spreading after the incident has been concluded and remediated? Just curious, how it looks today for you guys.
Yeah, for most clients, we have like an established point of contact and maybe a couple of backup people depending on the size of the client. And that's who I typically hold the security meeting with, is my point of contact, and whoever else decides to join. But once there's an incident, the step one is secure it, lock it down, shut it off. Step two is figure out why it happened after it's cleaned up, and then, communicate to the client. So, we have our channels that we use to talk to them. And quite frankly, it'll oftentimes bring us right back around to security recommendations that we've been making in their meetings. Is, hey, you had this AITM, click, and we've got that remediated. But if you'll recall, 2 months ago, we brought up, setting up some device trust configurations so that this kind of thing would be cut off at the knees. Even if they, stole everything out from under your user, they're on a device that's not known and they're not getting in. And so we just kind of tie it right back around to, let's improve our security because this happened. This is telling us we need to do better.
Yeah, that's a great feedback loop. And I think that's, a big focus of what we're trying to look at too, which is just, shifting from a reactive approach to posture management, kind of just stopping things before they become something you have to go and remediate versus getting a ton of alerts and tickets to go handle things as well. So it's great that you guys, I think that's doubling the value of, hey, we talked about this, we've been educating, this actually happened, and your tenant, if they're not ready to pull the trigger on the project or, the larger actual remediation steps that might be a little bit more end user impactful in those situations too, where you do have to communicate, you do have to plan, you do have to pilot test before you guys roll things out in that sense too. So no, that's really, really good to hear. And also I do probably, I consult still a lot, and I hear it probably from one one MSP almost every week now is like, hey, we're dealing with this incident, or we need you to help walk us through what we should be looking for, post breach, to kind of clean up for persistence techniques and things like that as well too.
No, I think you said it well though. We're really a posture management service, right? Is what we're doing. It's not just reactive, like waiting for alerts to come in and just setting and forgetting the tools, like many other tend to do sometimes. So
I imagine that also sets you up for exploring some new solutions. I know that no conversation would be complete if we didn't touch on AI just a little bit. So as you're going through some of those steps with clients, improving their posture, I imagine you have your eyes on the horizon of co-pilot adoption and things like that. Tell us a little bit about what you have in mind for the future on that, and kind of what your plans are there.
Well, for AI, the biggest things that we get asked, or that I get asked, are which one is safe, and what do I need to do to make sure that people don't mess up using AI. The first one is impossible to answer. Which one is safe? Well, it's kind of going to depend on what your people are trying to put into the AI. So it's not really a matter of which platform is the safest. It comes down to what controls are you going to use to monitor and manage their use of AI. So we have several things that we can do that are available in the Microsoft 365, the E5 security stack. We can use Cloud Apps to put up an implicit deny on generative AI and just allow the 2 or 3 in that the company has approved for use, and that cuts down a lot of the threat landscape right there. Just layering it down to the 1 or 2 or 3 that they're okay with. Beyond that, and maybe a few other little tricks, you're really getting into where you need to start talking about the compliance licensing for Microsoft and getting into that data security posture management, and actually not just knowing what people are putting into a prompt, but being able to block it ahead of time and not let sensitive information get put into an AI.
Yeah,
I think that's smart. I mean, there's a lot going on to get customers ready for that. And I think that you guys are well positioned because of the way that you're doing continuous improvement. It kind of naturally draws into, once they're ready for AI readiness assessments and the work that needs to go into the data governance piece, I think you guys are well positioned to kind of tackle that.
Yeah, that's our next frontier, and we're already in it with several customers. But yeah, the AI questions drive the data governance questions. Like, okay, well, where is your data? Where is the classified information? Is it labeled correctly? And so that leads into also some compliance work, right? And just managing to best practices like CIS controls. We have a lot of clients that are being driven by cyber insurance, stricter and stricter requirements and claims getting denied, um, and just industry, regulation getting harder and harder. So, yeah, and it'd be interesting to see, how AI unfolds into all of our businesses as we go forward. It's a powerful tool, but with great power comes great responsibility, as they say. Is that right? So,
well, as we kind of wrap up our session today, I just wanted to give a moment to first off say thank you, but also wanted to give you guys a chance. If there's customers out there that are looking for a partner like GCS, kind of what is that call to action for them, the guiding light, the North Star that you guys really drive the firm with, and what can they expect from you?
I would say if they're looking for a Microsoft expert, right? If they are struggling specifically with managing their Microsoft, estate, their digital estate, we're well positioned for that. We have 25 years in business. We've been around a long time. We have a lot of experience just in the general IT infrastructure security space. And we're heavily certified and designated as a Microsoft, solutions partner as well. So we also like to have fun, right? We like to get to know our clients. We like to teach people. We don't want to just, slot in as a vendor. We want to be a partner. And that's really what we're looking for. IT and especially cybersecurity is a team sport, or at least it should be. And in the conversation earlier, right, some clients just don't want to engage, but the ones that do are the best ones, and those are the ones that we're having the best outcomes with. So
Yeah, I'd say, from the outside in, you guys are super progressive in everything that you do. I think even just getting to interact, first with AJ here and then you, Shane, has been a great exposure of, somebody who's doing it really right in the sense of the education piece. And obviously I resonate with that a lot, just given what I've been doing on the T-minus front and the channel and all that. But I think that's so important to, have a full loop come through of, we're educating, we're enforcing, we're being proactive. And then we're partnering at the end of the day to make your security better, make your business better. And obviously risk advisory is one half of it that we've been largely talking about today, but it's becoming such a big focus, and I think it certainly opens up the gateway to having better, business advisory conversations at the same time too. So I just want to echo, loved having you guys on today, and appreciate all the feedback to us too, in the sense of just what you guys are seeing, what clients are concerned with, things like that, because it's just a nice community effect there too.
Yeah, and I just wanted to also say thank you
really,
guys for all the good product feedback that you've given our team too. It helps us as we we try to drive some of our feature releases based on feedback that we get from partners. And you guys have been a very active partner in that regard. So we really appreciate it.
Well, and as the critiquer, I will say, and I'm sure Mike or Nick's development staff loves the fact that I'm the critiquer, but you guys are exceptionally responsive, and I will brag. I actually made a feature request on your CloudCapsule and saw the feature implemented by the end of the same day. Now, I don't want to promise that to anyone else because I know the development guy and he will throw stuff at me for saying that out loud. But I have seen responsiveness like that. And that's beyond like a vendor relationship. That's a partnership. That's just working together to figure stuff out that makes the tools and the end result better.
Yeah. We really like what you guys are building over there, and your teacher mentality kind of aligns with us in a lot of ways. And a final shout out to you, Nick. I mean, back to the learning thing and just getting information out in the community. I know you started T-minus 365 back in 2020-ish. And, as we were really trying to build a service around these Microsoft tools, there was very little information out there, even from Microsoft directly. And some of these platforms were evolving so quickly. But you were putting out some really, really relevant content, geared towards MSPs. I mean, you were speaking directly to people like me. And so, yeah, we really appreciate you just putting that content out for the public to consume. I think I may actually have some comments in some of your videos from like September, October 2020, like asking questions about stuff in Intune, or how does the hybrid join piece of this work with that? And so anyway, really appreciate the continuous content you guys are putting out there, and we're consumers of that as well. And I mean, look, it's you got to talk to peers, right? You got to get feedback from customers. You got to be curious. You got to be out there learning, and learning in a lot of different places, and there's a lot of great content creators like yourself on YouTube that are, I think, moving the needle and putting some valuable stuff out there. So I'd encourage anyone who isn't familiar with your channel to dive into some of the content you've created and start following these folks.
Appreciate it. Yeah. That's an atomic habit, but it's been extremely rewarding, and it's good to get a snowball effect from it of, people chiming in. When I post about those pieces of content, I immediately think like, oh, I wish I'd posted about this before to make the video better with everybody's input on what they were doing. But no, it's been great, and looking to keep building it up here as we expand as well.
Love it. Well, we love the collaboration and the feedback loop we're getting from you guys too. And so this is great, and look forward to doing a lot more. So.
Well, we really appreciate you sharing your story with us, with all of our partners. Community and partner community is very important to success, just like you're saying, Shane. We all have to compare stories and share best practices, but also just we're kind of all in it together for the benefit of our clients. So really appreciate you guys being part of our partner community, and we look forward to having you on some future partner calls again.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, gents. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. See you guys.
See you later.
Bye.